There are three Etsy ads mistakes that we are seeing, especially moving into Q4. And I wanted to share these with you today because I want you to win in Q4. So to do this with me, I'm going to have Chris Schaefer come in now, and we are going to cover three of these Etsy ad mistakes. And the very first one, Chris, I know that you're going to probably want to explain in much more detail, but that is waiting to turn on ads. Why is this a mistake?
So this is a mistake, generally speaking, right? People say, I need to wait until I have 10 products, or I need to wait until my product has been up for 2 months to turn on Etsy ads. And any time of the year, I would say that is a mistake, because one of the biggest reasons that turning Etsy ads on, especially turning them on early, is important is we get all of the data that we need to know if we set the listing up correctly, and if Etsy understands what our listing is about and is putting it in front of the right customers. In terms of Q4, Scott, the reason this is even more important is we're operating on a shorter time frame, right? We can't worry about 4, 5, 6 months worth of organic data coming in for Etsy to figure this out. We need Etsy to understand immediately what our listing is about, and we need to know immediately what is working. So what a lot of people will do is they'll say, hey, the hot buying season for Halloween is 3 weeks before. I'm just making this up, guys. 3 weeks before Halloween. So I'm going to wait until 3 weeks before Halloween to turn my ads on. The problem with that, and this will tie into issue number 2 or mistake number 2, Scott, is that we don't get the chance to learn anything. If all we're doing is turning those on exactly when we need them, we are immediately getting dumped into the algorithm. We're getting dumped into the ads at the highest cost per click point, right? Because everybody wants to run ads at that point in time. And we haven't learned what's working and what's not. And so whether it's Q4 or any other time, my suggestion would be as soon as you publish that listing, get it up. In Q4, we want those running 60 to 90 days before that holiday buying season ends.
The second mistake that we're seeing is people are wasting money on ads, not intentionally, but there's something that they should be doing that they're not doing to basically save themselves money and actually convert higher. And what might that be, Chris?
You know, this is one of my favorite topics, Scott, and it's looking at what's working and doing more of that and stopping what's not, right? This is like 80, 90% of business is doing more of what works and less of what doesn't. Not paying attention to what's going on with your ads is the biggest reason we get from people. And the biggest thing that we see when people say, hey man, my Etsy ads aren't working, what's the problem? You say, you realize you're spending 90% of your budget for fidget spinner and you don't sell a fidget spinner, right? Why does that happen? The biggest reason that happens is because Etsy broadens what they show you for into a lot of related things when you are running ads, because they want to give you as much reach as possible while still keeping it relevant. So if you're not paying attention to your ads and you're not doing what we refer to, Scott, as pruning, which means going in, looking at the keywords that Etsy is showing your ads for and saying, that's not relevant at all. This is not a fidget spinner. This is a dancing avocado mug. Or, hey, I'm not sure if this is relevant. Maybe I should look at what people mean when they type this in. You're losing a lot of money that way. What we're looking for here, ideally, is a keyword that makes sense with our listing, leads to clicks, and leads to sales. If it's leading to clicks and not sales, then we have to figure out, Scott, what is the reason for that? Is it because my listing is wrong, or is it because the keyword is wrong? And both of those answers, whether it's your listing or the keyword, something that people miss out on when they're not paying attention to their ads. Not only are you wasting money in either of those situations, but you're potentially missing out on a lot of organic sales if your listing is the problem. So how do we know? We take a look at that keyword. It's leading to a lot of clicks coming into our listing. Okay, is it relevant? Is it a dancing avocado mug? If so, then it's probably a listing problem. If it's not, if it says fidget spinner, then it's a keyword problem and we turn it off. If it falls somewhere in between and it says mug, then we're going to go to Etsy, type in mug, and see what Etsy thinks people mean when they type that search in. And if it's products like the ones we're selling, then we can leave it on for a little bit and see what happens. If it's not, then we turn it off because we know it's not relevant, and all of those clicks aren't going to be relevant traffic for us. And I think the biggest issue I see here is not only are they missing out on that data, but you lose out on the ability to start to scale the ads because you're losing 40, 50, 60, in some cases, 70% or more of that ad spend to some of those potentially related or unrelated keywords. And so before we raise our budget, which is a big mistake that we see people making, they say, oh, I just need to spend more to get more back from ads. We need to prune back to see where we're wasting money and where we're losing out on conversions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's real good. And which actually kind of leads me into the last mistake, and that is not thinking about the long term or the big picture. And I'm going to elaborate on this because there's two areas that I want to address here. And the first thing is understanding how sales helps rank organically. I see the mistake where a lot of people only look at what did I get for putting the dollar in? Did I get my dollar back? That's what they're looking at. And the way that we look at it is I put a dollar in, I might have got 80 cents back. Okay. Cost me 20 cents to get that customer. Okay. Am I able to sell them something later? Did that help me increase the order size? Right. Because what people don't realize is if someone comes in on that one product and then they've added two other products, we've increased the value of that cart order. Now we're not just wasting 20 cents. We've just made $5 or 10 or 20, right? And we've got a customer. So thinking about it more on a long-term play than just what is that one sale, that one transaction. And that's why we're big on creating a brand around a niche. So this way here, you have more chances for that customer to buy more, whether it's at time of purchase or at a later date. Okay. So that's the one big thing there with just like not thinking about like long-term and big picture. Okay. The other one is you're targeting products that don't have enough demand. And what I mean by that is like you're putting $5 on your budget and you're wondering why you're not spending the $5. The reason why is most likely because either your listing isn't optimized properly for the right keywords that are getting traffic, or you are optimized and there just isn't a lot of traffic. There's not a lot of people searching for that. So that would be an indicator that your products don't have enough demand, which means that you have a very little chance of traffic coming to it, which will then make it also harder for you to sell stuff, right? So that to me is like seeing the big picture as far as how ads actually work for your business and not just looking at, I'm spending $1 to sell this mug, and if I don't turn a profit on this, I've lost. So that's the big mistake that I think a lot of people are making is they're not seeing the big picture. And Chris, I know that we have a guide for people that walks through our strategy. It'll also kind of explain this a little bit further. If you guys want a copy of that, just put ads in the comments and we'll make sure that we get you a copy of that. Once again, ads in the comments and we'll send you a free copy of our guide. Chris, do you want to elaborate a little bit on the big picture?
I think the biggest issue for me, and there's really two places where this hits home, right? The big picture is people say, hey, ads aren't working. And I think a lot of them immediately are making mistake number two. And this is something, Scott, that you and I see all the time is you're like, yeah, it's not working because you're wasting 80% of your spend. And if you went in and clicked that button right there, like just toggle that little toggle on that keyword, you'd be making a 6-to-1 return on ad spend. Right. But outside of that, people miss the big picture. They say, hey, I'm making a profit or I'm break even with my ads. I'm just going to turn them off. Or maybe, Scott, I rank number 1 in organic search. So why would I keep running ads? It doesn't make any sense. And our snarky response to that is typically, wouldn't you rather show up twice than just once? Right. But the real reason that we get snarky about that is that ad sales help us rank organically. Not necessarily directly, right? Etsy isn't like, oh, they're making sales on ads, let's rank them higher organically. But all of the indirect ranking factors that Etsy uses come as a result of that. When we're looking at the Etsy ads data, we get to know which keywords are working and which aren't. If they're performing on ads, there's a good likelihood they're performing on organic. If they're not working for us on ads, there's a good likelihood that they're not working for us on organic. The Etsy buyer doesn't necessarily know the difference. And so we can get a lot more data than we ever could before about the specific keywords and how people perceive our listings. That lets us go in and optimize our listings. Maybe we make some tweaks to the titles. Maybe we change the tags, the description, the images, which is the biggest thing for most. And by getting as much data back as possible, not only are we going to optimize our ads, but by optimizing them through that process, we're also optimizing on the organic side. And so we're reliant on that keyword data and the conversion data coming from Etsy ads because we get that much faster than we ever would on the organic side. And quite honestly, even up until the fact that they're now getting the beta search terms report out of beta, it's still more comprehensive data because it shows us exactly where in the process that we're failing potential Etsy customers. And driving that higher organic rank, driving more sales, whether they're coming from organic or from ads, is what starts that whole Etsy flywheel going. The more traffic and sales we have, the more traffic and sales Etsy typically will reward us with, both at the listing and at the store level. And I think, Scott, that ties into thing number 2, which is how in-demand products really increase shop traffic. And if we're thinking about driving traffic, even if we don't make $35 on that first sale, right? Because our ads are optimized, but we're not making the return on ad spend that we want, or we're using it as a loss leader type of a product because we know that there's a lot of traffic, that still allows us to start that Etsy flywheel going. And more importantly, it starts the customer flywheel going. By running ads, even on products that we're not massively profitable on, we're able to build our customer base. And this is something you and I are extremely passionate about. We know that it's easier to sell something to someone who has purchased from us in the past than it is to sell to a random stranger. Not only does it cost us less money, but they convert at a higher rate. And so even if we don't make our dream profit on the products we're running Etsy ads through, then we're still building that customer base, which means we're building repeat sales, which is not only something we as store sellers want, but it's also something that Etsy is starting to emphasize really heavily as well. So obviously, and I think you would agree with me on this, Scott, you're not an advocate of just lighting money on fire. And so if you have a product that you just can't get to work with Etsy ads, feel free to turn it off. But if it's working even a little bit, and you can do a little bit of pruning around the edges, or you can figure out a way to make it break even or better, I would say leave it on, because you're going to get all of those downstream benefits. You're going to get the conversion data back. You're going to understand what's working and what's not on the organic side, and you're going to really start to build that customer base.